Welcome to the Secret Keepers podcast with your host, Corrine Zootlegger. Join us as we uncover the hidden thoughts, stories, and moments that help bring light to the healing power of truth and examine how silence can affect us mentally, physically, and spiritually. We'll also share profound stories, interviews, and transformative narratives to help release ourselves from the hidden and step into healing towards inner peace, joy, and fulfillment. Now, here's your healing strategist and host, Corrine.
Welcome to the Secret Keepers podcast. And today I have a very special guest. His name is Nathan Spagnola, and he is someone that I met at a retreat in Teotihuacan. And I'm really excited for you guys to meet him, and I'm going to have him tell you a little bit about himself.
Yeah, well, it's a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity. Um, I've been working in training as a shaman for about 10 years now. And it's been a really interesting healing process for myself and also, in accompanying other people in their own healing process. But, when you learn and when you begin to go through that learning process of what it is to be a shaman, one of the first things that you understand is that you're your first patient, right? We have to understand how to heal ourselves first before we can even begin to consider helping other people in their process. And what you learn is it's a continual process, right? You're always going deeper and deeper. But as you go through that work, it just becomes more and more rewarding.
Yeah. Oh, I feel that because that my mentor, Joseph McClendon III, that is his philosophy is physician heal thyself. And so we apply all the neural encoding techniques to ourselves and then take it to the streets, if you will. Because right, you are like we need to heal. And sometimes people don't see it, right? They don't necessarily recognize what needs to be healed, because they're just not aware yet, right? Their awareness isn't there. Talk to me a little bit about, because in keeping with the Secret Keepers, obviously I mean, maybe not obviously, but to me, I would think that becoming a shaman and being on the journey of being a shaman, there was probably a little bit of a story behind that.
For sure. It's actually not something that I ever thought about becoming in the first place. The original dream was to be a yogi. There was this yoga guru who I wanted to work with, to learn from. And at a retreat that I was at, he invited me to this ayahuasca retreat that we were going to do, where we did 4 days of yoga and then 4 days of ayahuasca. And I didn't really even know what ayahuasca was at the time. I just knew
Yeah.
that I, felt, well, if he's saying that, it's a good time for me to take ayahuasca, he probably knows. And it was fascinating when, I had that very first ceremony because the ayahuasca spoke so clearly to me. That's the beauty as far as, how I work with ayahuasca. It brings a lot of clarity. And sometimes I find with other plant medicines, there can be more illusion, more confusion at times that you have to work through. But ayahuasca speaks very clearly to me, and it makes it easy for me to go through that healing process, understanding what the lessons are that I need to learn, how I need to apply those, the changes that I need to make. And as I went through those first initial ceremonies, it just began showing me what it is to be a shaman, what it is to walk this path. And it was just kind of telling me, like, this is the path that you're meant to be on. You're not supposed to be a yogi, you're supposed to be a shaman.
Awesome. I love that. It's so beautiful. And for the audience who may not have been exposed to shamanism and don't necessarily have an understanding of it, could you speak into that a little bit, Nathan?
Of course. Well, I mean, as you and I know, we've worked with Don Miguel Ruiz and the Ruiz family, which come from the Toltec lineage, which is, a very different style of shamanism.
Yeah.
I've worked with shamans in the Amazon, with Shipibos, with Jibaros, most recently with Ahuni Quinn. In the Sacred Valley, I've worked with, people of the Quechua lineage. And what you realize is that there are lots of different forms of shamanism. And not only are there these different lineages that have different traditions and methods, but each shaman has their own unique way as well. But the beautiful thing is that, everyone has something to teach, everyone has something to learn. And, like the first night that I was in the Amazon, actually, I was staying with a Tukuna man in his house. And he told me, you know things that I don't know, and I know things that you don't know. But together we can learn from each other, and that's how we grow. And I think really, regardless of, the lineage that a shaman is coming from, where they are in their process, the one constant through all of shamanism is that we're always learning. And, when we stop learning, that's when we stop growing. And it's important to always maintain that open mind, to have that sense of adventure for the learning process, and to allow it to unfold naturally, and to, actively engage in it so that we can continue that evolution.
Yeah, I feel sometimes like people think, well, I've learned it all. I've graduated from high school or I graduated from college, and don't haven't I just learned everything I need to? And at what point do you get to have fun in your life? And well, I've met you. I follow your journey. I feel like you're having a lot of fun in your life along with all of the learning. And I want to go back to what you said about, you know, the shaman saying, you have something that he doesn't know and he has something you don't know, and together, right, you guys get to grow together. And isn't that truly the essence of being human? Is
Absolutely.
right that we're to be learning and growing from each other, and seeing each other's perspectives, right? Because he who has the most perspective wins. Because if I can see things from all the vantage points of all the people that I meet, what a gift to me, because I then that gives me all the different lenses of how to see the world and opens me up. And meeting you was a gift. It was like, here's this
Thank
guy
you.
that backpacks around the world doing, and following your heart, right? You're following your heart, which a lot of people are afraid to do.
Yeah, yeah, and especially with, Western society, we've been conditioned to always use our mind first, right?
Hmm.
We need to use our mind to plan things out, to use this logic, and we think that if we have a plan, then we're able to control things, right? We're trying to create this reality, we're trying to get to some destination, and really what that does is it traps us in the mind, because the mind just confuses us. It creates these illusions, these fears, these anxieties. And this sense of control is, really the largest illusion, the biggest illusion of all of them. And if we're
Oh,
trying to figure out, where our path truly lies, we can't begin with the mind. We have to begin with the heart. And once we understand what the heart truly desires, then we
mhm.
can use the mind to figure out how we can make that a reality.
Oh, yes. I mean, that speaks so deeply to me because I am a heart-led person. I mean, I just really do. And, the answer to me has always been love. I mean, I look back to being a little girl, and it was just like, love to me was always the answer. And as pie in the sky as that could seem, it was like, I don't know any other way, like in
Mhm.
me. So I know that's the way I came. This is the package. Um,
Love is the default. Love is the default until we get conditioned, until we begin experiencing traumas and allowing those wounds to alter us, right? And then we have to begin that work to, hit that default button, that reset button, and come back to that essence of love.
yeah. And what in that journey, for myself, anyways, I was just talking with my oldest daughter, and I'm like, I have been on a real deep dive journey for the last 10 years. And what a difference it's made for me. And I see it, with you and what you're doing. So I want you to talk a little bit about like what you're doing, what, brought you to the Secret Keepers podcast, and, what really is in your heart. Share
Yeah.
all of that.
Fantastic. So I do have my own history of traumas, of, abuse, of, um, yeah, things that I've needed to heal.
Mhm.
And, especially very recently, actually, I was physically assaulted by a woman. And to me, it was kind of like this moment where I was like, it's time to start saying something. It's time to start sharing the stories that I have, so that we
Yeah.
can open this space up for these conversations that need to be had. And, again, in being on this shamanic path, you learn that you have to become the example, right? You have to be the
Right.
leader. And I know that there are lots of stories out there that, quite frankly, are much, worse than anything that I went through. But I have to, be the one to open that space and to say, these stories are out there, they need to be shared. And when we begin talking about these things, then it, frees other people to begin talking about those stories that they need to share. And so
Yeah.
it's really about bringing awareness to the fact that, I think in today's society, I would say partially rightly so, we've been giving women a lot of attention for the traumas that they've gone through. But in doing that, we've also been neglecting a lot of the men who have their own traumas. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, a lot of those traumas have occurred at the hands of women.
Mm.
And we need to begin having these honest, open conversations so that we aren't, putting these blinders on and only focusing on, specific groups that we think, need more attention than others, because everyone has their own traumas, everyone has their own story. And we
Yeah.
all need to go through this process together, regardless if you're a man or a woman or black or white or rich or poor, whatever demographic you fit into, we all have healing that needs to take place. And I think, the biggest thing is seeking truth and seeking healing in that process.
Yeah. Oh my God. I completely agree with you. From my own personal journey of what brought me into the space that I am now, right? So I look at like it's been incredibly important to me to serve women. And I have a few men that I serve, right? Because if they come to me, I absolutely do serve them. And I have a 31-year-old young man that I'm serving right now. And it's important. I lost my dad and my brother both to substances.
Mhm.
And so my journey has been one to uncover, like, why do people do that? Like, why do they abuse substances? And then it really opened me up to not just alcohol and drugs, but then there's all the other things that we abuse ourselves with. And then coming across, right, emotional intelligence and really having that understanding. And then knowing too that there are men that suffer in silence, right?
Mhm.
They're being, emotionally abused, they're being physically abused, and they're just not saying anything because you got to man up, right? You got to,
Yeah, yeah. It's
that's
really
that.
hard. It is really hard to be a man trying to process trauma in this world. Uh, for example, really when my spiritual process began, that was when I was in college and I was in an extremely dark place, very depressed, and I had become someone that I wasn't.
Mm,
And in this depression, there was a time when I was suicidal, and there, I had a whole plan of how I was going to do it and everything. And there was this one night that, somehow I got to the other side of that. And the next day, I went to the counseling center at Kenyon College, and I said, "I'm suicidal. I need help. Can we, set up an appointment?" And so we scheduled an appointment. And then the day of that appointment came, and I got an email saying, "We're really sorry, we've got to reschedule your appointment." And you can imagine, to allow
oh,
myself to be vulnerable enough to say,
right.
"I'm suicidal, I need help,"
Yeah.
and then to basically be told, "We're not here to help you."
Mm,
That's really difficult. And in today's society, if a man is complaining about something, oftentimes, people say that he's, this is toxic masculinity, that he's being negative, that, like you said, he has to suck it up. We're told
mhm.
that this is a problem that we need to deal with on our own.
Yeah.
Or another example, when I was working at a school, Whitmore School, I was working for them for about a year. And again, I had, some difficult personal experiences that I was going through. I could tell that, I wasn't sleeping well. I wasn't working at the level that I wanted to be working with the product that I was producing for the students that I was teaching. And I asked them if I could have some mental health days. And they
Mhm.
said, "No, we can't give you any mental health days. You have to wait a month, and then you can use your vacation days." And then when I got to the day before my vacation was supposed to start, they called me up. They said, "We've decided to fire you," and they let me go. And so again, whenever you ask for help as a man, when you allow yourself to be vulnerable, the people that you reach out to oftentimes, just blatantly tell you, we're not here for you. And that then, creates this conditioned state where we learn that we have to get through this on our own. And that's why so many men turn to substance abuse, because even when we allow ourselves to say, hey, we need help, we don't get that help. And then we turn to other sources to try and numb the pain and deal with it on our own.
Oh, oh wow. I just whew, there's a lot that you've been through. And right, and as as a mama, right? Because I mean, I got babies and I have a son, and I think, I raised him to know, like, if you need anything, right, you come to me. If it hurts, if it physically hurts, if it emotionally hurts, right? To be able to express that.
Yeah.
Uh, and that was really important to me, to allow that in our home, right? Is that you get to express what you're going through. And I can't speak for the masses because I don't, I'm not plugged into all the different resources out there. But I do know that we have a huge weightless mental health crisis going on out there. And I can't imagine being the man who finally decides to step forward and say, I need help, and then I have the door shut in my face. That's just terrible. Now, I do know some really kick butt men who are out there leading charges for men. I have some very dear friends of mine who have started men's groups and things to bring mental wellness and emotional wellness and roundedness to men. And I also see you doing that by standing up and saying, hey, you know what, these things have happened to me, and you're taking a different route in the shamanism route as your healing path. Um, can you talk to us a little bit, Nathan, about, like, what does that journey look like? If I'm a man listening right now and I'm thinking I might want to give what Nathan's doing a try, or even if it's a woman, right? We want to give it a try. Talk to us about what that looks like.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think the first step is most often the most difficult, because you look at all of this work that we have to do, all of this healing that we have to do, and it can feel daunting, right? And then
Sure.
we're just beginning to look at those shadows, right? To peek at to into those spaces that we have to begin exploring. There's a lot of fear, and that's a completely normal thing to feel.
Sure. Sure.
But being brave doesn't mean that we're not afraid.
All
Being
right.
brave means that we're able to do what it is that we need to do, even though we feel the fear. And we have to embark on that journey, understanding that it is really the best thing for us, right? Whenever we take a medicine, even if it's, cough syrup, right? It's not going
Yeah.
to taste good. It's not
Yeah.
pleasant, but we need it because that's what's going
Yes.
to help us become healthier. And
Yes.
so, when we've experienced traumas, when we have these wounds that are unhealed, we have to confront them, and we have to do that in a way that practices self-love first, right? We have to do that in a way that is gentle, that allows us to go through that process in our own natural way. We can't force it. We can't have expectations for ourselves. It's
Mhm.
not pretty, right? It's oftentimes messy, but that's
Yeah.
okay, right?
Mhm.
That's okay. We have to begin the process. And when we begin it, then we start slowly seeing the results, right? And you go deeper and deeper, and slowly things begin to get better and better. And it's like an onion. You keep peeling these layers back, you keep seeing the deeper and deeper layers, but it just helps you, reclaim your personal freedom. It helps you reclaim this sense of joy that, oftentimes we lose because we get stuck in that darkness. And it allows us to really open our eyes and recognize, wow, I was asleep this entire time. And now all of a sudden I can begin to see clearly, and I understand that this work that I'm doing is helping me feel better, and the results just speak for themselves. And that then becomes kind of this positive feedback loop that helps you to continue going. And as you go through that process, then eventually you recognize that there's this moment where you become an example for others, right? And then other
Yeah.
people can see you. So like with what I've been doing recently and talking about, how I've been the victim of sexual assault at the hands of women, and that I've been the
Yeah.
victim of physical assault at the hands of women, beginning to share these stories. I've started the hashtag men too, because it isn't just me too, it's men as
Yeah.
well.
Sure. Yeah.
I've been beginning to hear all these other stories now that people begin to share with me, saying thank
Yeah.
you for opening this space and starting this conversation. Men talking to me about the similar traumas that they've had, worse traumas that they've had. Female friends saying, my brother has a criminal record now because his girlfriend, made up this story and everyone believed her. And now, there's nothing that he can do about it. There are all kinds of stories that need to be
Sure.
shared. And it's just about, again, continuing in our own process, beginning that process, going into it, and understanding that by doing that, we're not just really helping ourselves, we're eventually going to be able to start helping other people as well.
Sure. And it raises awareness, right? We tell stories to raise an awareness of this. This is something that's occurring. In my, if my umbrella of what I want to accomplish in my lifetime while I'm here is to end child abuse. And when I tell people that, like their eyes get like super big because they're like that's a really lofty goal. Now, obviously, I know that it's going to take a lot more than just me to end it, but how do we start, right? One person at a time,
Yeah,
right? We start to heal, to heal the things that are, within us, the traumas, raising the awareness of us as a population, as a people, as these things are harmful. And then I look at like the rippling out of it is that getting to a point where we don't even have to talk about trauma anymore because it doesn't exist. And we can focus our energies on the dreaming state of what do we really want this life to look like? And that is the beauty of it, right? And the joy of it, and stay focused in that lane instead of having to heal the stuff that's behind us. That's the dream I have is
absolutely.
having that, and that's why I have this this podcast is to talk about all of the things. And I know that some of the topics I talk about on here make people uncomfortable. And I'm okay with that,
Yeah,
right? Because sometimes we have to get uncomfortable, like you said earlier, in order to move to the comfort, right? We got to stretch and grow and bring things to light and heal. And this process, like you said, it can be messy and it can be, but then it's exhilarating all at the same time, right?
for
You bring
sure.
the healing, you bring it forth, you talk about the hard, and I'm going to say that in air quotes, things, so that other people know they're not alone, right? When we know
Yeah,
we're not alone, that connection piece of it, right? Heart chakra, we need to know that we have connection with other human beings, and not just on a superficial level, right? How's the weather, that kind of thing, but that I can genuinely trust someone too, right? We need root chakra too, right? We need to get in there and really let people know that they matter and their story matters. And I appreciate you for being forthright because it's not easy, right? It's
thank
not
you.
easy to talk about the stuff, right? And then also, like the beauty of the the path that you have chosen to walk this healing process. Much like you, I've been in the dark depths of despair, of depression and suicidal ideation, and knowing those dark spaces. Um, and also have learned that sometimes when I'm in that space of feeling, it's because I'm on the verge of a breakthrough, like a big
Mhm.
one. Like I'm gonna up level.
Yeah, you have
So
to, I think, get to a point where you can observe those feelings without getting lost in them.
yeah,
Right. And when you can get there, it's like, yeah, you can all of a sudden have this perspective, like you just said, where it's like, okay, I'm in the valley, But if I'm in the valley, then certainly the ascent is about to come next, right? And there
Yes.
will be a moment where I'm standing on top of the mountain once again. And when I'm on top of the mountain, I will remember that there will probably be another moment where I'm in the valley once again. So I'm going to enjoy the whole process, the whole roller coaster ride. It's just, it's part of it.
It is. And I think, and that's just it, and whether it's TV, movies, social media, magazines, right, can paint this picture, the illusion that we see that that doesn't happen for other people.
It's
Right. But
part
when
of
we
life.
don't, we tell our stories, right? We say, no, no, this really does happen, right?
Yeah.
And do get physically abused and emotionally abused and have sexual traumas and at the hands of women, right? These things really do happen out there. We got to talk about it.
Yeah.
We can sweep everything underneath the rug. Before you know it, we got a hell of a pile underneath the rug. And so we got to talk about the stuff. And like I said, once we can heal some of that stuff. We can start dreaming about and using our imaginations for what do I want my life to really look like? And
Yeah.
I think I'm in that kind of fun state right now where what do I want my life really to look like?
Yeah. I think, one of the things that's helped me a lot in my healing process is realizing what an opportunity it is.
Hmm.
Because, these traumas that are committed, I think most often come from people who have been traumatized themselves, right?
Yes.
We have this, with like the child abuse, it's a perfect example. We have this ancestral energy that's being passed down from one generation to the next. We have
Hmm.
parents teaching their children that when you're upset, you hit. And then those children, when they become parents, they teach that lesson to their children. But what
Yeah.
happens is that when we are the ones receiving, some kind of abuse, some kind of trauma, we can realize that the person committing that trauma, committing the abuse, is themselves a traumatized and abused person. But it is now our opportunity to cut that energetic chain and
Yeah.
say that it stops with me. I will
Yeah.
not be the one that continues this toxic trend. I am the one that will go through that healing process that
Mhm.
everyone before me was unwilling to go through so that this does not get passed down any longer.
Yes, absolutely. I have a whiteboard behind me, but you can't really see it. But it says, are you going to continue being part of the chain or is it over with you? Right? So
Exactly. And I
you
can't
make
see
a
that.
choice.
So that's
I know.
fantastic that I picked it up
Yeah, you
somehow.
did. You did. You took it from the ether. Because that's what it's there, right? And that's where my umbrella is and who do I want to reach? And I don't really for what I do, I don't have an avatar, right? I'm not a it's a I'm looking at i- if you have an emotional, physical, you have a need from I'm here to help with that, right? Not I don't look at like, if you're between this age and you're this whatever, and that doesn't work for me for business because I'm like, that just doesn't work. But I do believe, like bringing the secret to light is what does heal things because when we keep stuffing it down, then it affects us physically within our body. This body is the way that the soul gets to be here right now. And so if I keep stuffing everything in here, ultimately I can create a disease in my body, whether it's
Absolutely.
an emotional, mental one, right? Or a physical component one, where on a cellular level. And then again, like you were talking epigenetically, something I can pass on, year after year after year, right? Generation after generation. It stops here, right? I'm a cycle breaker. Sounds like you're a cycle breaker too. We're here to say, no, no more. We don't want this anymore. And for any of the people, right? It's not even just the people that I love within my family, but I look at it as for the world, right? I don't want anybody to have to ever feel like I did as a child. I don't want anybody to have to, and I don't want to focus on that either because I'm like you said, like my parents, my dad, like was a child that was wounded as well, right? So if I can see that in him, it's so much easier. And I've been able to really look at him and look everything he taught me, um, the love that he gave, that he was capable of giving, and take all of that and have that be my focus instead of the negative components of it. And then can I teach all of that to the world too? Because there's a lot of really great stuff in there. Um, so yeah, and I hear you, all the shadow aspects of things, and those are the things people don't want to talk about though, right? Because
Right.
those are the less than they can be viewed as, the less than shiny parts of us, right? Um, but if I were to take a look at, say, 17-year-old me, and I would look at her and how misguided she was. But can I see her innocence and what, I bring her with me, right? I don't shun her. She's part of the deal. She's part of the
Absolutely.
package. So
It's super important to recognize, like you said, I mean, the same thing for me when I was, going through that deep depression when I was in college. I was in an extremely unhealthy relationship, and I have to take responsibility and say that I was the root cause of that uh, unhealthy relationship that I was in.
yeah,
But I
yeah.
also have to be gentle with myself at the same time and recognize that, like I was saying, I was a traumatized, injured being in that state.
Mm,
The way that I was reacting to certain situations was extremely unhealthy because I wasn't in that balanced state.
hmm.
And, instead of being judgmental, and hard on myself for the decisions that I made, I have to instead realize that I made the most important decision of all, which was to begin doing that work so I could return back to who it is that I really am. Right.
Yes.
And so when you can, let go of those mistakes and realize that they were lessons,
Hmm.
and then realize that you're applying those lessons, that you're no longer the person that you were, then all of a sudden you can forgive yourself that much more easily, right? And the
Yeah.
fascinating thing, so I'll open up about this. When I was in that relationship, I was an abusive boyfriend.
Oh,
And that was, something that was very difficult for me to admit to myself, right? To look at myself in the mirror and to recognize uh, the abuse that I was creating. But
sure.
it's amazing because when you go through this healing process, these tests pop up, right? To see where it is that you really are and how much work you've really done.
Sure.
And, just a few weeks ago, like I said, I was physically assaulted by this woman. But then seeing how I reacted to that situation was such a beautiful moment for me
Mhm.
because there was this moment where she hit me twice. I stood up
Mhm.
and I said, "You're not allowed to hit me." And I
Yeah.
opened the bedroom door and I walked out.
Yeah.
And to see how I had this presence in that moment, right? Not to react in anger, not to hit her back, not to do anything that I would have done as an 18 or 19-year-old, but instead to prove to myself in that moment, no, this is who I am now. This is the
Yeah.
work that I've done. These are the lessons that I've learned. And this is me applying those lessons in the moment, right?
Yeah.
That's when all of a sudden you can say, okay, now we're doing something, right? Now we've achieved a real change, something meaningful.
Wow. Oh yeah, I can hear it. Whew. And that's really big, right? Because it's like when when we are reactive, right? We don't sometimes, right, we can say things and do things out of that reactive state. So we know, right, yep, we're definitely triggered. But when you can practice that pause and take that step back and be like, no, 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 right?
I'm
Because
creating this healthy barrier,
yeah,
I'm going to create some separation here. I can feel all of these emotions that I'm feeling right now. I can be
yes,
with this person who's reacting in a very unhealthy way, but I will not let their darkness pull me into that darkness.
yes, yes. And that's huge, right? Because I think, as you go about the world, right, as you navigate out there in the world, if we were all reactive to whatever other reactions were being out there, woof, It really would be quite a bloody mess. Um, but really learning that, and for a lack of better word, right, self-control, right?
Yeah.
I am, and I teach this to my clients, right? We have the circle of responsibility, right? How I think, how I feel, and what I do in the action, right? That's on me, right? That's my circle of responsibility, the way I think, the way I feel, and what I do. And if I say, he made me, she made me, it made me do something, hmm, we might want to really take a look at that because,
Yeah.
you're the one in control. You're the one of just you, and the
Even
rest
with
of it is
emotions.
illusion. Yeah.
Even with emotions, in today's world, there are a lot of people who say, I am feeling this way, and you are responsible, responsible for me feeling this way. And so you're responsible for making me feel better,
Oh,
right? But
yeah.
we have to recognize that, a lot of times the emotions that we feel, they can be strong, but we do have a choice to make, right? And that choice oftentimes comes to our perspective, right? If I
Yes.
can if I can change my perspective, oftentimes I can change the way that I'm feeling about things. And if I'm putting all of that control and power on somebody else's plate, not only am I not taking responsibility for my own emotions and my own actions, but I'm also robbing myself of the true power that I have to get
Yeah.
rid of these negative emotions, to choose how I want to handle these situations, right? If
Mhm.
someone's making me angry, I can't necessarily change or make them change, what it is that they're doing that makes me angry, but I can separate myself from that. I can use my words and explain how I feel, and then they can make their own decision. I
Yeah.
can, take all these different avenues to try and reclaim my own state of being, right? That I want to be in, rather than giving all that power to somebody else.
Absolutely. And we are causative, right? We are causative beings. And so if I look at that and I'm like, well, you're making me feel this way, that really is the invitation for me to go inward. We're not taught that. We're not taught that in school, right? We're not taught that really in most spaces is that, if someone is, I'm in air quotes, making me feel that way, that's that invitation for me to go, huh, and get curious.
Yeah.
What's really going on here? Because it can seem like I would say the easiest emotion for anybody to go to is anger, right?
Hmm.
Because it's just, where I'm angry. Are you really though? And if I get curious and I peel back that first layer, well, what's underneath the anger?
Yeah.
You know?
I always find it sadness personally. Whenever I'm angry about something, whenever I'm frustrated about something, what is that emotion that's really underlying, beneath all of that? For me, it's always sadness. And the thing is that the sadness is so much harder to confront because you have to be so much more vulnerable in that state, right? Like you said, anger is an easy emotion to feel because there's an aggression to it. There's this external kind of, force that comes with that. But the sadness is this level of vulnerability that you need to feel. You have to kind of break open a little bit to access that sadness. You have to be extremely honest with yourself
It's,
to feel that
yeah.
sadness. And that sadness can be heartbreaking because sometimes we want something and we can't have it, or we wish things were different but they aren't that way. And with that sadness, that kind of last step of healing, I find oftentimes is acceptance, right? That we have to kind of accept that this is the state that we are in right now, and then we do what we can in our own power to try and change what we can control. And we
Mhm.
have to accept that there are these things that we can't control. But if we
Right.
can do that little piece that we can, if we can take those steps that we can to try and at least make ourselves feel better in the healthiest way possible, then again, that gives us that power back that we've lost.
Yeah, and release the expectation, right? Because we put so much on other people, right? And expect, and maybe unspoken expectations as well, right? That you're going to somehow meet my needs, or And ultimately then, right, goes back into that inward, right, in releasing, like you said, releasing the control. I like to say I'm a recovering control freak. Um, but and where does it come from, right? Control comes from when we didn't have any control, right? So we try to contain it and control everything. And that's that's literally like what I see is like you just release it, let go of the expectations of, that someone else is going to take care of you, because ultimately at the end of the day, you get to be your hero, I get to be my hero, and know that, you know, most we're walking around doing the best we can with the information we have. And sometimes, some people just have better information. And so the ability to have self-control is due to the fact that like you have walked this journey with the shamans and have learned better information and better skills and more about yourself and what Nathan needs as opposed to what the world around you might tell you Nathan needs.
Yeah.
And you're tuned into that and you're like, nope, I got this.
Well,
I,
it's one of the things that I love about the Ruiz teachings, that they
yes.
say that we are these artists, we are writing this story, right? The story of our life. And we cannot always control the experience that we're being presented with, but we can control how we react to that experience. And
Yeah.
by making those decisions, we write the story of our life. And we just have to ask ourselves, what kind of a story do we want to create? What kind of art do we want to create? We can create a telenovela drama, right? If we're going to react to everything and make things, emotionally
Yeah. Yes.
explosive, and
Yes.
it can be entertaining. It can,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but there's always a cost to that. Or
Yes.
we can, try and, like Don Miguel Ruiz says, create paradise on earth, right? And
Yes.
the only way that we can do that is by realizing
Exactly.
that, the power that we have is in the decisions that we make and how we react to those experiences that we're being presented with, and just trying to make sure that we are as present as possible in each moment so that we can make decisions that we're proud of later.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I really felt that, right, to create the heaven on earth. That is, that is really true, right? We get to decide. We've got these lessons we're going to learn, and we can learn them through pain, or we can learn them through love. And I found that learning them through love is a lot more fun.
Yeah. We suffer for as long as we want to suffer for, right? I
Yes.
mean, there
Yes.
it's
Yes.
that a lot of that is a choice, right? We suffer
Yeah.
for as long as we want to, and when we're finally tired of suffering, that's when we can really take a big step forward.
Yes. Oh man, I'm so there. I'm like, I am done.
Enough of this.
Enough of this. I'm
This is
like,
an
oh,
old story. I'm ready
yes,
for a new series.
right. Yes, exactly. A new telenueva, right? Was that what you
Yeah,
say?
telenovela.
No, novella, because I know those are the Spanish soap operas. Um, but yes. So, anyways, your journey has been one that truly fascinates me. The life that you live, the traveling all around the world, the studying with the shamans, the ayahuascas, all of that, in that being part of your healing process. If you were going to take and look at everything, Nathan, and give the audience one gold nugget that you want them to take with, because this is the big one. This is the big nugget. What wisdom would you want to share with them?
The biggest thing is just to do the work. It's
Mhm.
not easy, and it's really hard sometimes. We have to confront really difficult truths, and we have to sometimes even consider things that don't end up being true, right? Just to kind of really get an idea of, where we're really at, and to keep coming back to, where our truth lies. But
Yeah.
if we go through that work, if we go through the process, you begin to come out the other side. And when you do, you can look back and you can say to yourself, wow, look at how far I've come. Look at all the work that I've done. Look at how strong I am. Right. And
Yes.
once you get to that point, man, you can go on and go on forever.
I have to say this, because I want the audience to know how young you are because you're so wise, right? And so I feel that it's really important that they know how old you are, Nathan. So can you just tell them how old you are?
I'm 37 years old.
So he's 37 years old and he has this wisdom under his belt already. And so I just really look forward to watching what the next decade brings for you for wisdom. It has just been my pleasure to have you here. If the audience wants to connect with you, Nathan, how can they find you?
Absolutely. You guys can find me on Instagram if you type in, it's in Spanish, so it's soy, S-O-Y, period, solo, S-O-L-O, period, Coco, because in Latin America, everyone calls me Coco. So it's soy solo Coco with a period in between each word, which means I'm just Coco. I'm nobody special. I'm just walking this life as a fellow human being, trying to
Mm.
live as healthy and experienced as I can, and hopefully help other people encounter their own definition of what their healthy experience is for them.
Yeah, I love that. And I have loved meeting you, and our interactions have always been positive, and it's just been such a joy to follow your journeys around the world. So, you guys, you got to go out there, follow Coco on Instagram, reach out to him. He's a wealth of knowledge. And thank you for being on the Secret Keepers podcast.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you for joining the Secret Keepers podcast. If you found this episode helpful, please give us a like and follow so we can invite you back. And if you just want more, visit CorrineZuleger.com. Remember, you're not alone.